we still have. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks to those who have joined. We're going to wait a couple more minutes for other people to sign in. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to wait a couple more minutes for more people to join. Thanks everyone for joining. We're just going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes for more people to come. Okay, it is 7:05, so we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Graham with the City of Milpitas, and super excited to host this webinar partnering with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency and having Chris Corvetti be our instructor today. So as you can all tell, you are muted by default in Zoom. Just want to go over some best practices for today. We will be using the Q&A function. So during the presentation, if you have any questions, please type it into the Q&A box. At the end of the presentation, we will have time for where you can ask Chris your questions directly by raising your hand. Please note we are not using the chat function. So please type your questions into the Q&A box, or at the end, you can raise your hand. And this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the BOSCA website. So a little background on BOSCA. BOSCA represents 26 agencies that include cities, water districts, water company, university that all purchase water from San Francisco Regional Water System. BOSCA member agencies provide water to 1.8 million people in over 40,000 businesses and organizations in Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. BOSCA's goal is a high quality supply of water at a fair price. So outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped opportunity for water conservation in the BOSCA service area. Outdoor water use reduction through the use of water efficient plants and innovative techniques can help conserve water and ensure that future water supply needs of our communities are met. So if you live in a BOSCA member agency, they have specific rebate programs. This includes the Lawn Be Gone program, which provides $1 to $4 a square foot of lawn replaced. There's also a rain barrel rebate program for $150 for rain barrels. Please check the BOSCA website and your retailer's website to see what programs they participate in. In addition, BOSCA now offers Ratio, which is a smart controller rebate program. And this program is very easy. Once you buy the Ratio controller, you will automatically be able to have the rebate. This controller can be operated on your smartphone and normally retails for $280. Through this program, customers of participating water agencies can purchase a controller for $100 plus tax. And then BOSCA has a redesigned landscape rebate program, which is scheduled to launch this summer. The program will incorporate the Lawn Be Gone program and the rain barrel rebates while adding additional incentives for stormwater retention features. As I noted, check out bayareaconservation.org to see if your retailer participates in these programs. Bosca is hosting upcoming webinars, so please mark your calendar. Milpitas will be hosting the Edible Water-Wise Gardening for Beginners on November 17th. So if you want to join for that one, we'd love you, but please feel free to attend the other upcoming classes as well. And for more resources, you can go to bayareagardening.org. This is a great website for resources on different plants to use and how to transform your garden and other best practices. Now, if you live in Milpitas, we work with Valley Water to provide rebates. So I'm specifically going to highlight the rainwater capture rebates since they're very relevant to today's presentation. So we do work with Valley Water to provide rebates for rain barrels, which is up to $50 per unit, for cisterns, which is $1 per gallon of storage, and rain gardens, which is $2 per square foot of roof area diverted. So please, to actually apply for these rebates, you'll go to watersavings.org, but we have more information on our webpage as well. If you live somewhere else in Santa Clara Valley, they might have different rebate numbers, but still work through Valley Water. So as I mentioned, the rainwater harvesting rebates are part of the landscape rebate program, which also includes irrigation equipment upgrades and lawn conversion rebates of $2 per square foot of lawn replaced. You can learn more about all the Milpitas rebates at savewatermilpitas.org. Great. So now I'm going to give a quick intro to our awesome instructors. So Chris Corvetti has a degree in environmental science and mathematics. She has focused on environmental education since she graduated. Her passion has led her all across the world before she came here. She moved to the Bay Area from Mongolia 4 years ago to pursue her career in habitat restoration and water conservation. In the past 3 years, she has installed 20 rainwater harvesting systems, including over 24 rain barrels and a handful of rain gardens. So super excited to have Chris as the rainwater harvesting expert. Chris, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Linda. So I'm going to start out with the big question, why harvest rainwater? I actually had someone recently come up to me and ask me this question. So I think it's a great place to start our presentation. The person that asked me this actually went on to say that their water bill was reasonably low and they were wondering, does it make sense? Their water bill's fine, why make any changes? So I still have lowers water bill as my first bullet point on this slide, but there's a lot of great reasons why you should harvest rainwater, and we're going to talk about a couple of the other reasons as well. So to answer that, I'd like everyone to think about all the water you use. You drink the water, you cook with it, showering, cleaning, flushing your toilets, watering your plants, washing your pets, doing your laundry, keeping your landscaping beautiful. These are just a few of the ways we lose water every single day. Now think about where your water comes from. So 85% of the potable water for the Bay Area actually travels about 8 days to reach us, all the way from Yosemite. The fact that we need to bring water 160 miles to the Bay Area really highlights the shortage of water that's right here. On top of that, we struggle with pollution finding its way into our creeks and waterways. There are many different pollutants. I'm not going to go into detail, but just think about the different oils, soaps, plastics, pet waste, and brake dust that are transported into our creeks through polluted runoff. These pollutants are carried from the flashes of stormwater that flow right into our creeks. All of that water we're using in our house goes into the water treatment system and it gets treated. But all of the water that we use on the outside goes into storm drains, and all of that water in our storm drains goes straight to our creeks and into the bay. So there's those different types of water that we're using. Harvesting rainwater is a great way to address both of these issues, the shortage of water as well as the polluted runoff. That way we can let the rain and snow melt in the Sierras, stay in the Sierras, and use rainwater from here to keep our landscape looking great and our plants happy. It also helps replenish our local groundwater, and it removes the transportation that brings those pollutants to the creek by reducing the amount of water flooding into our system. So all around, better for the environment, better for our neighborhood. There's a couple different types of rainwater harvesting we're going to talk about today. The main one we're going to talk about is going to be rain barrels and cisterns. We're going to talk a little bit about rain gardens. I'm just going to briefly touch on permeable pavement because it's also a great solution to consider for your home. There are two main types of permeable paving, porous cement and spacing between pavers. So in this middle picture, you can see porous cement on top of two cinder blocks with a hose being poured on it. The water from the hose is actually running straight through that porous cement. So it can be poured in as a slab or purchased as pavers. It's really common now in parks. In Milpitas, there's a lot of public parks that have this for the walkways. It's also becoming more common for using as parking spots. It's not really durable enough to be used for roadways, but it's great for driveways. The other option, which you probably have seen a lot of in your neighborhood, is these pavers with built-in spacing, or even people that have decoratively put rocks with spaces between them to give a really artistic look, but allowing that water to sink in. So I'm not going to take a lot of time on permeable paving. It kind of explains itself. It's paving that allows the water to flow through. When we're using it for municipal needs and we're looking at a lot of water and a large area, it's very engineered. They have layers of drainage rock underneath it. When you're looking for your own home, there are different options available, and just something to think about if you do redo your walkway or your driveway in the future. Some areas do have rebates available, so check out with your local area if that's a possibility. Okay, we're gonna head into one of my two favorite rainwater harvesting techniques, rain gardens. Rain gardens are a beautiful way to help mitigate the seasonal flooding by absorbing additional water into the ground. This photo on the left is in Bull Park and Palo Alto. The city of Palo Alto came to us and said, we have a really bad issue of flooding on this bike path in that top corner. And when they came to us, this was actually a hillside, and the hillside was very compacted, dirt. It had grass at one point, and all the grass had been let to die. So it's kind of just dirt and would run off and put dirt on the bike path. But the bike path is also sloped in such a way that it would kind of create a channel and flood right there. So every time it rained, they would get complaints from all the local residents that use this bike path to commute. So what we did is, you can barely see it because this is such a healthy garden. We dug a dry creek bed all the way through here and all the way down to the bottom, and you can just barely see a grid at the bottom there where there was already a pre-existing storm drain. So what we were able to do is actually engineer this dry creek bed. So during the dry season, it just has those rocks in there. But when it rains, it's able to take all that water from that impervious bike path and bring it into this channel and soak it into the ground. I've actually never seen it overflow into that storm drain because it's so efficient. And it really looks a lot prettier than that dirt hill that was there before. So it really enhanced the landscape. And it's really great way to provide some native habitat for local birds and bees and other insects. There's even quite a few bunny rabbits that run through there. So it's really pretty. So what makes it really efficient is the way that it's built. So the anatomy of a traditional rain garden is about 12 inches deep. So this whole depth, we're looking at about 12 inches. If I can write it too, there we go. And the way that works is at the very bottom, after you dig it out, you're going to put some sort of a drainage rock or a gravel, something that is going to have space between it that the water can kind of fill up and be underground. Above that, you're going to do a layer of, we call it bioswale soil, but it's your local soil mixed with compost and sand. So it kind of lightens up the soil a little bit and makes it a little bit better at draining than a lot of our local very heavy clay soils we have around here. And then on top of that, you can use gravel. I like river rocks, anything that's going to create a nice base to keep that soil in place. I find river rocks, the rounded rocks, really attractive. So that's usually what I go for. But any sort of rocks or gravel will work. And you want to have enough space so that you can actually get a couple inches of water ponding on that top. And when I say ponding, I don't mean we're creating a pond. We don't want water to stand all the time. We want that water to soak into the ground. We want that water to follow these blue arrows and soak all the way into the ground and recharge our groundwater. And when it's doing that, it's not running off into our streets and into our storm drains and straight into our creeks. It is stopping in that gravel. So any pollutants that it has will actually get caught in those river rocks, in those gravels, and they will sit there rather than running off in a torrent into our creeks and hurting our fish. I really do recommend native plants. Native plants are great habitat for all of our native insects, and they're also really uniquely adapted to be able to take a ton of water in the rainy season and then be very dry in the dry season. This garden here at Bull Park does not get watered. And you can see it's extremely happy, extremely healthy, even in the dry season when it's not getting watered for months at a time. These plants are adapted to be here. Linda, did we have any questions on rain gardens?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. I'm gonna keep moving forward. One of the questions I get most often when I start talking about rain gardens and rainwater harvesting in general is, you know, we're in California. I'm talking about this long dry season. Is there actually enough rain? And the answer is yes, there is. We do get quite a bit of rain. We just don't even realize it. So I've got a great equation here that you can use to calculate your harvesting potential of your house. But the punchline is 1,000 square foot roof can capture over 600 gallons of water in just 1 inch of rain. And, you know, not everyone likes doing math, so I did the math out for you. Here's our equation. And here we are looking at that 1,000 square foot roof. Average rain event here in Milpitas is about 1/2 an inch. So looking at that, if you have 1,000 square foot roof, you can get about 310 gallons from just 1/2 an inch of rain. In a year though, we get about 16 inches of rain, which is not much if you look at other sections of the country that get double that, or even other areas in the Bay that get 10 inches more than us. But even that 16 inches per year is over 9,000, almost 10,000 gallons of rainwater that could be harvested from 1,000 square foot of roof. So the harvesting potential is great. It's a wonderful opportunity. The next question people always ask me is, well, you know, I have this type of roof, I have that type of roof. Can I actually capture rainwater from that, or is one roof more efficient than another? So to answer that, there are differences in different roofs, but you can capture rainwater off of any roof. It is easiest if you already have downspouts in place, but it's not impossible to install gutters and downspouts. The most efficient roof type is tin. I just built a shed this past year and I put a tin roof on it because it was the cheapest, easiest thing for me. And even now we haven't had any rain, but in the morning there's enough dew on my tin roof that it drains into a bucket I have So I'm already capturing water even now just from condensation overnight, which is kind of incredible. So tin is very efficient. Tin roofs really aren't common in this area though. So we're looking more at the wooden cedar shingles or shakes, the asphalt shingles, ceramic and clay tires, rubber roofs, or cement tiles. Those are really the ones we see more around here. And all of those are absolutely great for harvesting rainwater. You do not lose much water. You're probably not going to be able to capture it just from the condensation like you can on a tin roof, but you're definitely, anytime it rains, that water is going to run off and you're going to be able to fill your system. When you do start considering what you're going to water with these different types of roofs, if you are thinking about watering an edible garden, you do want to consider root vegetables. For roofs like the tin, the clay, ceramic, or cement, your root vegetables are going to be totally fine, completely edible. You're not going to have any worries about it. For your shakes or your shingles, both wood and asphalt, you want to make sure to check that the roof is not treated with any algicides, herbicides, or any other chemicals. A lot of times with the newer asphalt shingles, they're not treated, but the glue they use to install them, they say to let it set for 3 years before you hook it into a rainwatering system. So just if you have a new roof put on or an old roof that you treat regularly, just be aware of what you're putting on your roof if you're going to be capturing. If we have no questions, I'm going to move on to rain barrels.
We got one question on roofs. What about Dura foam roofs?
Oh, good. Yeah, foam roofs you can absolutely capture water from. With the rubber and the foam roofs, I don't recommend using them for root vegetables. Citrus or vegetables that are vining or not a root vegetable, they won't soak up anything, so you're going to be totally fine. And again, it's great for landscaping. So general landscaping, these are all fine.
That's our one question right now.
Okay, great. So I'm going to move forward onto rain barrels. So rain barrels are, I think, what most people think of when you think of rainwater harvesting. So I'm going to spend most of our time today talking about rain barrels. I'm even going to go through a quick slide-by-slide presentation on how to install one on your home. But we're going to start out basic. We know that rain barrels are used to capture that runoff off of your roof and store it for later use. We already talked about how great it is for decreasing the need for irrigating with municipal water and reducing all that flooding and the polluted runoff. So we already know all this great stuff about rain barrels. So let's learn a little bit more about the details of using a rain barrel. The first things you want to consider when choosing your system is your roof size or harvesting potential. So you want to run that equation and put in your own square footage of your roof size and see how many barrels you want. You know, you're always going to be able to put one barrel in, but maybe you want to get more, or you want to get a larger system. Figure out how much water you have access to and what can work. You want to consider how many downspouts are on your house and how many downspouts you want to hook up to the system. You don't necessarily have to hook up every downspout on your house into a rainwater harvesting system. You can pick and choose the ones you want to use. You want to think about your installation space. You don't want to be blocking your pathway. You want to make sure you have enough room to set this up. There are different types of barrels that can be easier for tighter spaces. You also want to think about where and how you're going to use your water. You want your barrels to be accessible to where you're going to use the water, closer to your garden, closer to your landscaping. We already talked about the roof types, and you want to think about how you're going to use that water. And you know, if you have certain types of roof, you may not want to put it so that it's irrigating your root vegetables, but it might be a really great match for your landscaping. You also want to think about your drainage or overflow swale. you absolutely have to have this overflowing or draining onto your property. You cannot overflow onto your neighbor's yard. You do not want to be giving them an unintentional boggy area, and you don't want it to be right next to your house where you're draining, because you don't want to add moisture next to your house. You want to use a system to get the moisture a little bit farther away from the house. So just think about locations. Also, it's nice to have something pretty. I personally really like this barrel here. I think someone very artistic, far more artistic than me, did a great job making this recycled olive oil drum look absolutely gorgeous. So think about what's pretty. So we're going to take a look at the anatomy of a rain barrel, and we're going to follow the path of the water as it goes through the system. And I have a lot of trouble choosing colors. I'm going to try orange, and we're going to see if it works, but I already have red on the page, so I'm sorry if it's not the clearest of colors. But I start up here. This is the water coming in the downspout, so hopefully that's pretty visible. So we have a downspout coming in, and the first thing that water hits is this leaf eater, and that leaf eater is our first level of protection for our rain barrel. It pulls out all of the big debris. It acts as a mosquito screening. In the state of California, it is required that the input and overflow have a mesh or screen to keep out larger particulates and bugs. So a leaf eater is a great option for that. This particular barrel actually also has a screen underneath the leaf eater right here. And so it has the screen on top and then an internal screen. So it's got double layers of protection, so there's no mosquitoes getting into the system. Then the water flows into our barrel and it fills up the barrel, and we get our fill line up at the top. And at that point, it's always nice to know how much water we have. So the great thing is you can get an accessory called a depth gauge. And you can see in this case, our line is on the top of the green right there. So that is full. So we've got a full barrel of water here, which means when more water comes in, it has to go somewhere. And that is the overflow, which in this case heads out the back and down. And the overflow here is buried about 10 feet underground into a rain garden. So the whole thing overflows and floods a rain garden and creates a very natural looking creek bed. And that overflow, you can see our mesh here. So it's keeping mosquitoes from being able to come back in. And we have that overflows on our own property, which is really important. We talked about that. And it's giving the extra water somewhere to go. Next up, we have the straps. Those are earthquake proofing. I do highly recommend them. They are not required. All of the installations I've done, including this picture, are on public sites. So we do them because we don't know if kids, or in some cases my husband, might decide to start climbing on the barrel, or if we're going to have earthquake situations. These barrels are very heavy when filled with water. We'll talk a little bit about that more later. So they are very stable when they're filled. When they're empty, they're not as stable. So the straps are really important. And then we have the output. You can see in this bottom picture, we have a filter here, and then we have two timers that go to two separate drip systems. And they are set up specifically to water two different systems that need different amounts of water. In this case, we also have an output going to a hose. And that hose is used to just manually water anything you want. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these different parts of the barrel and how they play in. So we've already talked a lot about the inflow and the overflow. These are two different styles. So you can have a full diversion, which means all the water from your pipe comes into your barrel. Or you can have a partial diversion, which is something like this. So the water comes in here, and then it comes down the hose into your barrel. When your barrel fills, it actually overflows back into the same pipe, comes out here, and goes back down your existing downspout. So this is a really great system, especially if you're only doing a 50-gallon tank or if you're doing a slightly smaller system. Even for the larger systems, it really is efficient because when it rains, the water comes down the sides of your downspout. So it really does capture most of the water. But it allows you, if you have a French drain already installed, it allows you to go back into your existing downspout, so you don't have to worry about that. In this case, your master screening is right here, and it's one piece of screening that is both your inflow and your overflow. For this picture on top, you would have to install an overflow somewhere near the top to allow that extra water to come out. So we already talked a little bit about the output and considering how you want to use your water. The main things to think about for your system is that you want to use drip irrigation. It's the most efficient if you're going to have an automated system. With rainwater, once you get over 360 gallons, you can't do spray irrigation without a permit. So the drip irrigation allows you to get up to 5,000 gallons worth of water in your system, which is a lot of water. And you can drip irrigate without needing a permit. With the drip irrigation, I do recommend putting a filter on your system to get those finer particulates that will be in your barrel. And then basic timers are great, but you need to have something that is called a zero pressure timer or a gravity fed timer. They're specifically designed for systems that don't have a lot of pressure on them. You can also water with a hose, but keep in mind water seeks its own height. So if you hold the hose higher than your rain barrel, you're not going to have enough pressure for the water to come out. So you need to be able to hose water very low to the ground if you're using a smaller system. Watering cans are great, and running it into a dry creek bed's also great. Linda, any questions as we head forward with some accessories?
Nope, but you guys feel free to type into the Q&A, but not right now.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about some of the accessories. We already mentioned a few and some of them we haven't. We talked a little bit about the leaf eater. There are different styles. In the past, I've done these presentations. Everyone always asks me, well, how much does this cost? How much does this cost? And, you know, I added the cost on here. And keep in mind, these are an accessory. You do not need this. This is, you know, the handbag that matches the pretty rain barrel. So it's not absolutely necessary. It is helpful. You do need some sort of screening. This can act as your screening. They range from like $30 to $60 for the different types. You can buy them sometimes through whatever organization you're getting your rain barrel from. Local hardware stores have them, or as much as I hate to say it, but Amazon is also a great place to purchase if you want to purchase online. Again, there's a lot of local places that will sell them as well. They're very easy to clean. I should mention this. You can see there's these little tabs on both sides and in the middle. You just pull up on those tabs and the whole screen pops out and you can knock it against something and it's clean. It's very easy to maintain. First flush diverter, there's currently a lot of debate among professionals as to whether or not to use a first flush diverter. I use them at some of my sites, but not all of them. This is kind of my when to use it, when not to. When I'm able to maintain and clean the diverter, and I'm really concerned about particulates in systems, so if I'm doing a drip irrigation system and there's a lot of overgrowth above my rain barrel, I do put a first flush diverter. If there's really no regular maintenance that's going to be done on this barrel and I'm going to be watering with a bigger system or I have extra filters in place and there's not a lot of dust or overgrowth, I don't always do a first flush diverter. The system's really simple. So the water flows in from the top, and when it fills, this ball will float up, and there's a gasket here, and the ball will sit there and close the gasket, and then all the rest of the water will go that way. So what that means is that all that first water that flushed into that tube has the dirtiest water. It's, you know, all the stuff that's on your roof when it first rains, all that dust from summer, all the ash from all the forest fires, everything that has hit your roof all summer long gets kind of flushed in that first onset of rain. So all of that would then get trapped in the bottom here underneath that ball, and then all the clean water would flush into your system. And then this bottom down here unscrews so you're able to empty it out and clean it. There's usually a very slow drip that happens on the bottom as well, so that it automatically drains. So you only have to clean the system a little bit. I also know some professionals that don't use a first flush, but they unhook their system for like the first hour of the first rainstorm of every year. I've never been able to do this because I manage multiple sites. It'd be a bit impossible for me to drive around to all of them. It takes more than an hour just to drive to the different sites. But some people, especially on your own home, if you are concerned about that first flush of rain, you can unhook your rain barrel and then rehook it about an hour, even 30 minutes into that first rain, so that you're still getting water from that first stream, but you're not dealing with a first flush diverter. Did we have any questions on our first two accessories, Linda?
Yes, we do have a question on the drip irrigation system connection. Kim is saying that she has 2 water hogs, and even when they're full, there doesn't seem to be enough pressure to drive the drip. And if any best practices for that, or if there's a minimum gallon count to really get that drip irrigation working.
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the biggest issues when you have a rain barrel system or a gravity fed system, you need all of your drip lines. I talked about the drip timer being specific to it, but all of your drip irrigation lines need to be 0 pressure lines. So specifically designed for gravity fed. The holes are a little bit bigger, and they're designed to water from as little as 20 gallons of water. If you only have a 50-gallon barrel, when you get under half, you do lose a lot of pressure. The 0 gravity lines will still drip, but you're going to have to run them a little bit longer to get enough water to push out of them. And you need to make sure that the end of your line is closed, because if the end of your line is open, the water is just going to, run straight through the end of your line. So hopefully that answered it. Just having really specific gravity fed irrigation lines in place and gravity fed irrigation emitters in place, because they are different than the ones you would hook up to a normal municipal line, because your normal municipal water does have a lot of pressure behind it that you're not going to have with a gravity system. But the bigger you get, the more pressure you have, and we're going to talk about that when we start talking about the different types of barrels.
Great, and I think you addressed our other questions, so I think we can keep moving.
Great. So the other accessory I talked about earlier was a depth gauge. They do make depth gauges if you have a barrel that is maybe less accessible and you want to know how much is in it. This one on the bottom left, this piece is actually a remote. That was a bit of a crazy drawing, sorry. This piece is remote that sends a signal from the tank, and you can, set this in your kitchen so you can always know how much water you have in your tank and how fast it's filling when it's raining. The other one you have to actually come look at, and it is fully customizable. So this one goes up to, I want to say 600 gallons. This particular one might do a little bit more. The largest system I put it on was a 500-gallon tank, and our fill line was about here. So you adjust it to the size of your tank, and you adjust your green arrow to where the fill is. And that way you see the percentage of the water in your tank. So you're not seeing gallons, you're seeing a percentage. So as your dial moves around, you can tell where your tank is. Honestly, if your tanks are easily accessible, you can just go up to your tank and tap the side of it. And when it goes from a very solid sound to a very hollow sound, that is the level your water's at. So a depth gauge may not always be necessary. I tend to install them at preschools or schools where the kids want to be able to check on their system regularly and see how they're doing. Did we have questions on the depth gauge, Linda?
We have a good overall rainwater harvesting question. We have a resident saying that they live in a townhome and they don't have a garden and other uses for the rainwater.
Absolutely. We're going to get into that in a little bit. So we will come back to that. But really, it's great for indoor plants. It's great for any house plants you have. You can use it for washing tools. It's not great to wash a car in your driveway because we really don't want that water running off. But if you need to wash the windows on your car or something small, it's great for that. It's a great use for anything that you can use non-potable water for. You can even flush your toilets with it, but you do need a permit if you're going to hook it into anything inside your house. So everything we're really talking about today is, how to use it outside your house, and none of that, anything outside your house, when you're keeping it on the smaller scale, you do not need a permit. As soon as you want to connect anything that's inside your house, you need a permit. So just to kind of put that out there, but we'll talk more about using your water at the end. One of the other ways to use your water is an on-demand pump. So this is a basic flow jet pump. They range from $80 to $150, and they're fairly small. They are specifically designed to be on demand. So when you plug in, this might be a good solution for that gentleman that was wondering about, doing their drip system and needing a little bit more pressure. Anytime there is water coming into the pump and a need for water to come out of the pump, it will turn on if it's plugged in. So you can either plug a hose in yourself and then plug in the pump and turn on the hose and it's going to run, or you can set it up to a time drip irrigation. When that timer opens the valve, the pump will run to run the irrigation and then it will close. These pumps are not weatherproof on the outside, so you do have to store them somewhere weatherproof or build a casing for them. Not a hard thing to do. There are casings you can buy specifically designed for this as well. I've just bought toolboxes and drilled a hole and sealed with rubber cement sealed around the pipe so that I was all set up to store it outside and keep it plugged into the wall. And they work really, really efficiently. So we've been talking about rain barrels, and I'm going to move on and just talk about cisterns for a minute. So cisterns is kind of just a fancy word for saying a rain barrel of over 200 gallons. And you guys are probably noticing that this picture on the right is the exact same picture I used for my rain barrel anatomy. And I did that because for most rain barrels and cisterns are going to have that same anatomy. All those parts are the same. The cisterns are just bigger. So on the left here, we have a 500-gallon tank. The guy on the ladder is about 6 feet tall, and he's, up a couple feet from the ladder, but the tank is about the same height as him. It's about 6 feet tall. And, it's bigger. It's 500 gallons. So you definitely have that water pressure that we were talking about because you have more water in there. Both of these tanks fill up within like the first hour and a half of any rainstorm in the area. They fill up very fast. They're on a huge building. Cisterns just allow you to capture more water. They have that higher capacity. So that way it's going to last longer in the dry season. You may not run out in the summer. You're going to use even less municipal water. You're going to get that higher pressure for your gravity systems, but you really need to think about where you're going to put it because it's much heavy. Water is about 8.3 pounds per gallon. So when you're looking at that 265-gallon tank on the right, you're looking at a little over a ton of weight when it's filled. And the one on the left is a little over 2 tons. So it gets quite heavy. There are options for this slim line, like the one on the right. The slim line is very narrow, so it's able to fit into tighter spaces. They come in all shapes and sizes. You can get round, short ones that are, short and squat and wide that are still 500 or 600 gallons, but only, 3 feet tall. They're all different. They often cost for the round ones about $1 per gallon, which is great because that's actually what the rebate is. So you can use the rebate to almost fully cover the cost of the barrel itself. When you get into the slim lines, the cost goes up significantly. You're looking a little bit more like $2 or $2.50 per gallon because you're getting that custom style, that thinner design. The other option also is a below ground cistern. These do require permits. You are looking at a more complicated system. You absolutely have to have a pump. This is a more engineered system. This would be installed by a contractor. You're not going to install this on your own home. And these cost more, but they can be quite large and really take over your system. And if you're already going through the process of having a contractor and getting a permit, you can get it plumbed into your toilets. You can get, it hooked into to use it more with your house because you're already going through that permitting process. One of the great ways that you can actually get a huge water capacity without looking at cisterns is by daisy chaining. So you can take any smaller size barrel and you can daisy chain them together to get a larger system. You can even daisy chain cisterns together to get a really large system. It's really easy to add on additional barrels, and this can give you better pressure for watering. You can even use it to bridge the gap from a downspout to a garden by running the barrels, along your wall or your fence. And again, most cisterns can be daisy chained. One of my favorite types of barrels is doing a wine barrel conversion. These are great for DIY enthusiasts. You get that really nice garden rustic look, and you're recycling, which is always great. And a lot of times if you check with a local winery, sometimes they have older ones they're ready to get rid of. They can't use them anymore. So you might be able to get a really good deal to get these cheaper. Sometimes they're like $60 to $80, and sometimes you can get them for free. These were both donated because I was doing installations for a nonprofit. I would call the wine barrels to be, an intermediate to advanced DIY project, maybe intermediate DIY project. But if you're more of a DIY beginner, the food grade barrels are for you. They often come with, this is like beginner to intermediate, they come with instructions. A lot of times the blue barrel system, which is pictured here on the right, you can buy as a kit or as individual barrels. And they have, I've seen them do systems that are over 2,000 gallons, and each one is a 55-gallon drum. And they can be painted. Their system is interesting because they have a very special system that drains from the bottom. So every drop of water comes out of your barrels. And it's a little bit self-cleaning in that way. You can do systems with olive oil recycled drums or other food grade barrels as well. And again, that's kind of a DIY project, but a lot of times you can get kits that come with it. But if you want the very basic DIY project, great for DIY beginners, that's going to be a basic rain barrel kit. On the left, we have the raindrop box. This is a box designed by a high school student in San Mateo, and she is now a college student, and her mother is selling them. But they're great. They're a very slim line. They only come out 11 inches from the house, so they can fit in very tight spaces. And it comes with a full kit, and she'll deliver it locally. But they're kind of expensive because they are that special design. If you look at the earth-minded rain stations or some other kits like that, come with a full kit. They have a planter on top. Be careful though, a lot of them are 45 gallons, which does not qualify for the rebate. The rebate has to be 49 gallons to 99 gallons, I believe. So you want to keep an eye out for that. But if you do like those 45-gallon ones with the planters on top, you can get 2 of them, daisy chain together. That's 90-gallon system. I believe then it qualifies, but Linda will correct me at the end when she talks about rebates again. And then you can get all sorts of various styles, and they're all going to come with their own installation instructions, and usually they're very detailed instructions. I'm going to move forward and talk about installing your system and how to do a basic DIY installation from one of these kits, unless we have any questions about these before I move forward.
We have one question about how many gallons in the raindrop box.
The raindrop box is a 50-gallon system.
And then one quick note is for Valley Water rebates, it can be anywhere 40 gallons is the minimum.
Oh, 40 is the minimum. Wonderful. Sorry about that. So if you live in Milpitas or in the Valley Water District, the 45-gallon rain stations are within the rebate even by themselves. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about how to install this at home. So when you get your barrels, this is 2 barrels. These are the ones, this is very specifically, because I took these pictures as I was installing it, this is these 2 barrels right here on the left. And these are installed at Tierra Linda Middle School in San Carlos. So we're gonna look at how to install them. So they're stacked together, which looks a little funky, but you'll get a full kit of parts like this. And it comes with your drill bits, it comes with your inflow hose, it comes with your diverter, and all the little bits that are going to connect to the rain barrel itself. All you need to do is bring your own power drill. And then we're going to kind of look at the first step is going to be installing the bottom. And we're going to also look at installing an input pipe. So we're looking at the output and the input. So for the input, you want to make sure that you are just a little bit above the height of your barrel and mark where you need to be. And it's going to give you really precise instructions on where to cut on your downspout. You're going to use the hole saw provided to drill right into your downspout. And then there's 2 screws that come with it that can be screwed in. And then you just pinch and squeeze the rubber diverter and put it into the hole in your downspout. If you ever decide to remove your barrel, or if you are installing barrels somewhere other than the Bay Area that you actually have a real winter and you need to disconnect for the winter, for the cold, you're going to look at maybe putting that stopper on. But otherwise, that's a great thing to just keep in your garage or in your storage area so that you can always have that if you ever need to remove your downspout. I have seen people that live in apartments get permission to do this on their balconies to water their houseplants. And they installed something like this on their balcony, just a 50-gallon barrel. And then when they moved out, they just got permission and put the stopper back in and left it. And the landlord was okay with that. So it's always good to keep that stopper. So now we have that input in, we got our hose hooked up. So we're gonna look at the base. So it'll come with 2 little rubber gaskets here, and those are threaded. And you just kind of pinch them into this M shape and then put them into the hole. The holes are pre-drilled at this point on most barrels, and you'll just plug in your spigot, your hose, whatever you're going to put in there. The kits usually come with a cap in case you don't want to plug anything in, you just want to have it capped on the bottom. You can do that as well. I usually like to put a ball valve so that it's easy to turn it on and off and disconnect or drain my system. And you'll just kind of push that into the hole and you're all set. The top one you do normally need to drill. That's because a lot of these barrels have multiple options on where you can put the top one. And you may be running a different overflow or a connector on the top to daisy chain as well. So they have different options. So you'll use the smaller drill bit, you'll drill the hole, and then it's these bottom rubber gaskets go right in. You can even see there's a little knock there to hold the drill in place to make it a little easier to drill the hole. If you're not comfortable doing the drilling, I'm sure you know someone who is comfortable with a power drill and will be able to help you out. These are very basic DIY systems. Once it's installed with this particular system, you have the option to either have the barrel closed on top or to have the planter. Either way, there's a little mesh screen at the top so that no bugs can come in. And always make sure your system is fully closed. So I usually put a screw through the side right here just to make sure that that lid stays on and it's not going to be opened and allow bugs in. So that's kind of the basics of installing a system. Each system you get will have its own kit and very clear instructions. If you go with something like Blue Barrel, they have a series of on their website that shows you exactly how to install absolutely everything, step-by-step videos. So each product has their own style and system, and they do show you how to do it on your own. So it's very approachable, very easy to do this yourself. Maintaining your rain barrels, it's very, very base. Ideally, once a month, get out there, check everything over, empty all the screens, and, double check it. You want to clean your gutters. You should be doing this anyway, but you definitely want to make sure your gutters are cleared out. And you want to empty that first flush diverter. And, once a year, this is actually a legal requirement for the plumbing code. But visually inspect all your valves and components once a year. For me, as I walk to my car, I look over and I go, oh, it looks good today, and I'm all set. I visually inspected my system. So you just, you'll notice if anything isn't working, that'll show up very quickly. But just keep an eye on your system. Really, you want to use your water after every storm to try to get that water to soak into the ground, and then you'll be able to capture a full new barrel for the next rain. But even if you want to let that water sit for 5 years, it's fine. It's going to be fine. It'll get a little bit of a funky smell, but all of these rain barrels are very specifically designed to hold rainwater. None of them are clear. They're all set up so they can't get the UV light in, so they're not going to grow algae. They have the screening, so they're not going to become a breeding ground for bugs. So all these systems are designed to last. These barrels should outlive you, especially the food grade or the bigger barrels, the cisterns. They should outlive you. And a lot of the cistern companies give a guarantee of something like 35 years and expect them to last 60 to 70. They really are very heavy duty barrels. And most importantly, let's use that water. So it's really important to use your water regularly. I think it's, like I said, great to empty your barrel between storms. We really want to make sure that water gets a chance to soak into the ground. You can use a pump or let gravity do all the work. It's great for landscape ponds or bird bath. As long as you're not leaving those out, you want to make sure those are drained regularly so they don't become a breeding ground. Great for washing tools. You want to, water your garden, your landscaping. It's great for house plants. Really just great to get that water in the ground and not have it be part of that first giant rush of water coming off of every house and going straight into our creeks, carrying all of those pollutants along with it. And again, we talked about earlier, you can connect it to toilets for flushing, but you do need a permit to do that. So it is a bigger step, and you would have a general contractor come out and get that permit for you and generally do the full installation. So we're gonna be closing up and doing questions soon, but leading into questions, I've got a couple of handouts that I've created that will be sent to you with your follow-up email later in the week. And I'm just gonna hand it back over to Linda to talk a little bit more and remind folks about the rebates, and then we'll open it up for full questions.
Great, thanks, Chris. So we do have the upcoming classes. So just a reminder to put that on your calendar, and please please join us if you've never gardened before to learn how to plant some edibles. And then just a little more background on the rebates. You need to know that you do need to submit an application and get it approved before actually purchasing your rain barrel or cistern. So make sure that you just submit the application. It's pretty quick and easy to do, and Valley Water does have a pretty quick turnaround, especially for the rainwater capture rebates, but make sure you submit that before you buy your actual system. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, but really hope that you guys are able to take part in some of our rebate programs. And please type your question in the Q&A. We also have some time here if you want to raise your hand. I know it is 8 o'clock, so if you're not able to stay on anymore, thank you so much for joining us. But yeah, Chris is going to be here for a little bit to answer questions, so please type them or raise your hand.
Yeah, don't hesitate to raise your hand. Sometimes it's easier to voice your question orally than it is to try to figure out how to type it. So don't hesitate. Now's the time.
Okay, we have a raised hand from Kim. I'm going to allow you to talk, Kim.
Hi, thanks. Great presentation. I have a question about, you had said to let it go or to drain them every time they get full. So I have 4 water hogs in 2 different locations. And so in order to maximize the amount of rainwater that I actually capture, once they get full, if it's early season, is the recommendation then to go ahead and let them drain into the flower beds?
Yeah,
so that water stays on site?
Yeah, absolutely. So personally, my philosophy is, I want to use this water for my garden, and that is, that's primary. But I also want to help the local environment, and one of the ways that I can do that is by capturing as much water off of my roof each time to reduce the polluted runoff for each storm. And so by letting your system sink into the ground, it's called slow it, spread it, sink in. And by slowing that water down but with your rain barrels and then spreading it into the ground after the rain, in between rain events and letting it sink in, that is, a significant amount of water that is not getting flushed with all those pollutants off the street into our creeks. So that is a great way, and that water will still find its way into our creeks. It's not like, or we're threatening to have the creeks run dry. This is actually going to help the creeks in the long run because it's going to filter that water through the ground and then find its way into the aquifer. So that is definitely my philosophy, is to use that water between every storm and then capture more water. And you'll see by doing that, you overall, the amount of water that you run through your system throughout the year will be significantly increased.
Yeah, I usually just let them fill up and then I just use them throughout the summer for my watering cans. And it'll get me through the summer for that. But I won't, okay, I think I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. And I will say, if you're not expecting any more rain, definitely keep those full. Don't run them dry fast, because you want to have that for the whole summer. But if we get that rain, hopefully this month, we get some rain in November, we're gonna get more than just one rain in November. Even on the worst years, we get more than one event. So use that water in between, especially like last year we had some very early rain in November, and then we had weeks with no rain. So that's a great time to kind of cycle that water through and get your system empty again and ready for that next rain.
Okay, great. Thanks for that suggestion.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand. Okay, we have another question from Puma. Excuse me if I pronounced your name wrong, but here I'm allowing you to talk.
Hi, thank you for unmuting me. I just want to know, I mean, which rebate will be useful for my home because I treat water with respect in the sense I just use all my sink water, kitchen cleaning water to the plants, and I'm very careful about not wasting water at all. So, but I don't know which is the rebate program I can apply to. Can you please tell me?
Yeah, so if you want, so on the rainwater capture side, I think the most simple, as Chris has gone over, is the actual rain barrel. So that's basically where you apply for the rebate saying that you're going to purchase a barrel in the certain size you're going to purchase. And then once you're approved, you can actually go out and purchase that rain barrel. So that's kind of the simplest way of collecting rainwater for your home would be the rain barrel rebate. But as Chris went over, we do have rebates for cisterns and rain gardens as well. But I'd say the simplest option is the rain barrel.
Okay, so where do we buy these rain barrels? Sorry, I missed that part.
So you can get them at there's different types, and we're gonna.
I know, I saw all those pictures, but then I don't know. I haven't decided which one to get. I can pick and choose anything, right?
Yeah, so you choose what works for you because a rain barrel system's a personal decision. You want what you're gonna like at your house.
Right. Okay.
And you have to look at it every day. I don't ever have to look at your rain barrels, so what I like best doesn't need to affect what you decide on. Choose which one you look best, and then you can go on the internet and just do a search for the one that you like the most and see where it's available nearby.
Okay.
And a lot of them are available at local hardware stores, and if not, they are available to order online. If you're looking for something bigger like a cistern, there's a store in San Francisco called Urban Farmer that has a very large array of cisterns. But other hardware stores closer will have different cistern options as well. And they may not carry it in their store, but they can order it for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thanks. Anyone else want to ask a question while we have Chris here?
What are you doing?
Wait another minute or so, since I do know we still have 12 people here, so please raise your hand or type it in, whatever you prefer. I guess, Chris, while we wait for questions, since I know the raining season is coming up, do you have any suggestions of kind of how to prepare for that first rain event?
My biggest suggestion is, get your rain barrels ready before the rain so they are ready to capture as much as you can. It wasn't a great one, but it is good. And if you do have a big landscape and you want to run that landscaping from a rain barrel, just take the time and run the drip irrigation. If you already have municipal irrigation in place, you would run additional rain barrel irrigation lines for that gravity fed that your rain barrel never hooks into the municipal water supply. It's a separate system, so you can run additional ones that are zero gravity drip lines. And that way, if you do have to turn on your municipal drip lines again, you're able to, especially as if we hit November like this year with still no rain, a lot of our rain barrel systems are starting to run dry, and we're switching over to a little bit of municipal water again. So it's, getting everything prepped to be ready to run from your rain barrels all winter.
Great. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, but if you do have one, please feel free to ask it. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Chris, for the great presentation. Please reach out to me at milpitasworks at ci.milpitas.california.gov if you have any specific rebate questions or other clarifications. And we hope that you can join us for our last BOSCA class of the season. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.